Robert Browning is one of the greatest poets of the Victorian period and one of the greatest poets of all time. And he was also married to Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And they had an ideal romance. He was a very loving, caring husband. She was very famous, but he even married her, and he always held her in high esteem and put himself second. So reading My Last Duchess, you can see he's speaking from another point of view. He's not speaking from I'm Robert Browning. He's taking on a different persona. And it's in the format of a dramatic monologue. Okay, so here's how the poem starts. That's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now. Frau Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. Okay, so first of all, we can see that the speaker is not Robert Browning. Taking on another persona, he's created a character, and he's the one that's speaking the poem. Also notice when it says as if she were alive. So they're looking at this painting of his wife, and when he says as if she were alive, that already insinuates that she's not alive, she's dead. So this is a dramatic monologue, and there are three things that are important to a dramatic monologue: the speaker, the occasion, and the implied listener. Okay, so the speaker, the one that's saying all the words that we see here, is a rich and haughty duke in the Italian Renaissance period. And dukes at that time were like kings. They ruled their little area and they were the law. So he's big stuff. The occasion, he's arranging a marriage to a young, wealthy girl after the death of his wife. And the implied listener, who never gets a chance to say anything, is the servant of the to-be bride's father come to help with marriage arrangements. Okay? Okay, so one thing Robert Browning really does well is enjambment. Now, enjambment is the opposite of end-stopped rhymes. So even though wall, call, hands, and stands rhyme, we don't stop there. We keep talking. That's my last Duchess painting on the wall, looking as if she were alive. So the period comes after the word alive in the middle of the next line. I call that piece a wonder now. Frau Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. So you don't even notice the rhyme. It's such a wonderful technique of writing. I just always admire it because you don't notice the rhyme the first time you read it because you just don't stop. You move on to the next line to complete the thought. Can you see that? So wall moves on to looking. Call moves on to that. It's all part of the same sentence. You don't stop and take a breath. So you don't accentuate the rhyme. And it's actually a much cleverer way of writing than if you just, really accentuate the rhyme. And then it continues. Will it please you sit and look at her? I said Frau Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance. But to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I've drawn for you, but I. So here we have the concept of objectification. Okay, he's very possessive of his things, we find out, and his Duchess was supposed to be one of his things. He wants her to be an obedient little picture here, and that is what we see as it's the objectification of women, that a woman is robbed of her agency and made into a thing instead of a person. Sometimes that even happens without this, it being so obvious as it is here as her being made into a painting. It could also be just that the woman herself is treated like an object. Okay, so also we have something called containment. He's keeping the painting behind a curtain. Okay, so he's not only has he contained her through his tyranny and his murder, which is suggested through the poem, but now she in his mind is transformed into a painting with no agency of its own. It's kept behind a curtain so that he can control who looks upon her beauty. And you notice how he says that now she only looks at him. That's what he's always wanted. He's always wanted his wife to just make him her world, her master. And now he can because now she's dead and all he has left of her is the painting. and seemed as they would ask me, if they durst, how such a glance came there. So not the first are you to turn and ask thus. Sir, 'twas not her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess's cheek. Perhaps Frau Pandolf chanced to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint. Okay, so here he's getting jealous. He is jealous of anyone who looks at her or anyone she notices, even if it's harmless. And so we can also guess that maybe he's warning the messenger is coming to represent his new bride, the new Duchess, that she better be obedient, never interact with others. Just expect, I can use this painting as a warning. Okay, so half flush that dies along her throat, such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whate'er she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. Sir, 'twas all one. My favour at her breast. Okay, so I just want to stop here and talk about another thing. So with the enjambment also comes caesura. Caesura, we stop in the middle of a line of poetry. Okay, and we do that quite a bit in this poem. Here we notice there's a dash, that means we stop, a heart, pause, pause. How shall I say it? Pause, pause. Too soon made glad. We see it also here with the exclamation point in the middle of the line and with this semicolon. So you can go through and just find where there's a period, a colon, a semicolon, a dash, comma. All of those are signals that we stop in the middle of the line. And so it really does add to the drama of the poem. And also we kind of notice that here we have a very young Duchess. She seems very childlike, very simple. She likes all the sweet little things, just like, just a young girl coming and discovering all these sweet, simple, beautiful things of nature and, people being kind and friendly to her. When he says, the dropping of the daylight in the west, the bough of cherry some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode with around the terrace, all and each would draw from her like the approving speech, or blush at least. She thanked men good, but thanked somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift. Who'd stoop to blame? And so we're going to stop a second and talk about this idea that traditionally the man carries on the lineage. And so we have this man who's very extremely haughty, and that idea that his gift of a 900 years name with anybody's gift, that he's it, he's special, and she's not worthy of him. This sort of trifling, even had you skill in speech, which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such as one, and say, just this or that in you disgusts me, here you miss or there exceed the mark, and if she let herself be lessoned so, nor plainly set her wits to yours, forsooth, and made excuse, e'en then would be some stooping, and I choose never to stoop. Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, whene'er I passed her, but who passed without much the same smile? This grew, I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together. There she stands. And so we see all smiles stop together. He was very jealous, enraged. He made her life miserable with his trying to master and control her. And finally, she died. Now, whether or not it was murder or else he just withdrew the life out of her through his forcefulness, we can't tell. But it does sound very suspicious. There she stands as if alive. Again, kind of that insinuation that she's not. Will't please you rise? We'll meet the company below then. I repeat, the Count your master's known munificence is ample warrant that no just pretence of mine for dowry will be disallowed. Though his fair daughter's self, as I avowed, as starting is my object. Now we'll go together down, sir. Notice Neptune, though taming a sea-horse, thought a rarity, which Claus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. Okay, so this is important. First of all, he talks about the dowry. The Duke provides the old respected name and title, and he's expecting the Count, the father of his to-be bride, to provide the money. So this idea that women are things that can be bought and sold, just like this painting that he commissioned the artist to paint, or like this bronze statue. Now this little statue is pretty important because it has Neptune, this great big god of the sea, and it's taming a seahorse. And a seahorse is a little tiny fragile thing. If you've ever seen a seahorse, they're tiny, eensy weensy. So there's this comparison, this implied comparison of the Duke himself and the Duchess, this huge, big, powerful god, trying to tame this little tiny, sweet, delicate creature like the Duchess. It's very sad. And then here it's cast in bronze, just like the Duchess was made into a painting. Whenever I think about that, it actually does make me feel like crying because it's pretty sad. Okay, last but not least, this is the concept I want you to take away is the idea of irony of point of view. Okay, so this is not Robert Browning talking. Robert Browning was really a very sweet and chivalrous husband, but he is using the voice of a mean, haughty, male chauvinistic duke to hold up a mirror to men of society on the wrongs being done women in Victorian England. So by saying all these things, and he's wanting us to say, how horrible, how awful, that's not good. And then men, you need to think about being more sensitive and kind. I hope you enjoyed this and also read Porphyria's Lover. It's also a very good one. Very similar concepts.